G'day folks, Uncle Knackers here with part 2 of my tiny home on wheels, van to camper van conversion. Now in today's episode we'll be looking at some sound deadening, some wall and ceiling insulation, and if time permits, a bit of wall framing. This is going to be a long day. Let's do it. Starting with the sound deadening, you need to concentrate on the areas of your van, whether it be the ceiling or the walls, like this side panel here, that sound tinny. For example, tinny, not tinny. And where it does sound tinny, stick on some of that sound deadening material. Now, you don't need to cover the entire panel, just a strip will do. And then once all that's done, head on down to the wheel arches, because a lot of noise comes up from the road, through your tyres and up through the wheel arches. So it's a great idea to cover the entire wheel arch with some of that sound deadening material. That sounds better. Now I think I should caveat that last statement by saying that, like I mentioned in the previous video, my son is on a very tight budget, and this stuff here is quite expensive. But if you can cut one of these sheets into two and do two panels, well, it becomes very cost effective. But if you've got the money, by all means, cover the whole panel with that material, because it will do a better job. But in our case, desperate times call for desperate measures. It's hard to say, desperate times call for desperate measures. Bit tricky. Now, one handy little tip when applying the soundproofing to the wheel arches, do it in small pieces, just like I'm doing it here. It's much easier to handle and you'll end up with a better finish. So that's the sound deadening all done, and I managed to get all of this out of the one box, which was $105, which is within budget, so that should keep the young fella happy. Alrighty, onto the insulation. As I did in the last video, to stick the insulation in place, all I'm using is a good quality spray-on contact adhesive, which does the job very nicely. Mental note, just be careful not to spray any on the lens of the camera. Not looking at anybody in particular. What? And with those areas where it's a little tricky to stick on the foil board, a packet of Pink Bat's wall insulation, which is rated at R2, is a great choice to stuff into those little nooks and crannies. Just bear in mind that it can be a little itchy, but it's reasonably cheap, so fits within our budget. However, if your budget can stretch just a little, woolen bats are a great option, as they don't itch and they offer a great R value. Now, with the sound deadening and the wall insulation all done, it's now time to concentrate on putting in that wall framing for the wall cladding. Now, I've just had a thought, but behind this section here, there are lots of wires and other sorts of bits and bobs that I may want to access down the track. So what I think I'm going to do is just replace the old cover, just like that, and then only frame and clad to this level here. I think that should work. Or am I overthinking it? Better to be safe than sorry. Now, just between you and me, if everything goes to plan like it has so far, this has the potential to be a schmick little motel on wheels. Speaking about motels, a couple of months ago I stayed in one, and as per usual, next to the bed in the drawer was a Bible with a message on the inside that said, if you're an alcoholic and you think you have a drinking problem, call this number. I called it. It was the liquor store. Let it out, folks. That's all I got. Now, as you can see, the wall framing on my son's van, which by the way is a Hyundai iLoad, is really quite basic. All it is a couple of sticks of timber repeated on the other side that are simply attached via some metal angle brackets. What isn't basic, however, is actually cutting out the template for that cladding. The reason being is that on this fan we have lumps, bumps, ins, out, curves, you name it, it's got it. And to tell you the truth, it almost did my head in. So what you need to do is to grab yourself an old piece of cardboard like I have here, cut in some shapes, run a few experiments until you think you've got it just about right, and then transfer that onto a template to see if it fits. Now, as you can see, this is how mine turned out. Now, it fits pretty good. I'm fairly happy. Just needs a few minor adjustments, but once that's all done, we'll then transfer this shape onto the actual cladding, but we won't install that until all the wiring's been done, which will be in the next video or two. Stay tuned. Now with the roof, Jack didn't want the usual boring old plywood ceiling that you see in a lot of vans. So what we decided was to jazz it up a little by initially cutting some MDF to the shape of the roof, which I then painted black to create an accent, which you will see a little later on in the video. I then also ran some string line that I will use later to drag some wires through for the LED lights. Now attaching the MDF to the roof as a one-man band proved to be a little tricky, as you can see. But thankfully, through sheer perseverance, I managed to get there in the end. And obviously, as you'd expect, all expletives were edited out of this scene. By this time, Jack, the prodigal son, has returned from his surfing sabbatical to Fiji, which was perfect timing as it was time to paint and attach some 66mm pine strips to the MDF, which is definitely a two-man job. Now, these pine strips, painted white with the black accent in between each board, really makes that ceiling pop and creates that authentic surfing safari feel to the van. So after all that hard work, this is how the ceiling finished up after a couple of coats of paint. And I have to say that I think it looks absolutely awesome. And I even got the seal of approval from Jack, which was a big relief. Now just very quickly, one very handy thing to remember before you install your ceiling is to either run your cables or at least make provisions, like I have here, for your lights, fans, etc, etc. Because once that ceiling goes up, it's going to be impossible or very difficult to run your cables. Now if for some reason you've been living under a rock and didn't get to see part 1, do yourself a favour and check that one out just so you can see how we got to this stage here. And I'll leave a link to that video down below and also at the end of this video. So let's see, today is the 23rd of March 2024, so part 3, the grand finale, should be out in a couple of weeks from today. And in that video, the cabinets, they'll be all in place, the electricals will be done, and that cladding will be all sorted, with the van ready to pull out of the driveway and hit the open road. So make sure you don't miss it and tune in for the grand finale. Alrighty, after all that, I think I need a cup of tea. So till next time, be good, be safe, and I'm out of here. Cheers.